other than Shannon Wheeler, and not Matt Dunford. So, Shannon Wheeler is the Eisner Award-winning cartoonist. You probably know him best from Too Much Coffee Man. You may have seen him these days in New Yorker cartoons, and you know, other graphic novels like Shit My President Says, and he's been really all over the board with a number of projects. But Shannon, can you tell us, how did you start out?
Yeah, just seeing comics as being magical and wanting to be able to do that magic, and that was really what sucked me into them. I do have the PowerPoint. When do you want to roll into PowerPoint?
Whenever you're ready on it.
Or the opera bit. I also brought the short animation of an opera. We can roll with the opera first, and then the PowerPoint, and then we can you can humiliate me after that.
Okay, humiliate.
So okay, we're gonna start with the opera. All right. So the opera's worked with the guy Daniel Crafts on doing an opera. He bugged me for a few years about doing an opera, and I just thought it was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard, until finally I had a dream where Too Much Coffee Man was singing, and I thought, I was like, if only I knew somebody that wrote music, and then I could team up with them, and then I was like, that Bugs Bunny opera with singing, I was like, and so all day long I was kind of racking my brains as to who I knew, and then finally at the end of the day I was like, wait a second, this guy's been bugging me for 5 years to do an opera, and I thought, you know, I might as well just do it. So I sent him a libretto, which is a short piece of writing that rhymes. He said, just do it in rhyming couplets. And his understanding of my jokes, the timing, was just spot on. And so I thought, this is an opportunity I really need to take advantage of. And then in the PowerPoint, I'll go into more detail about how stupid that idea was. Oh, and we have 2 people that are in the PowerPoint too. You guys make cameos.
Oh, we're in the slideshow? Okay.
Yes, it's great. Both of you, actually. All right, so here's the opera with subtitles as well. And Scott Bateman did this animation, which is great of it.
Attention deficit
All right. Thank you. So that is the, is this gonna work? Here we go, let's try
When do
this.
PowerPoints ever work?
Hey,
Oh,
hey,
wow.
thank you.
Whoa. Hi.
So I'll run through the PowerPoint fairly quickly so we can get to the Q&A, which is more fun.
Yep.
And I've got stories that will get me fired from just about any job.
Okay.
And-
Act like cartooning is a real job.
Right. Thank God. So most PowerPoints, when people go through their lives, they start at the beginning and they have some slide of themselves reading a comic as a 4-year-old, and everybody's like, oh, that's so cute. And it's just really boring and cliche.
We're
and
taking
stupid.
selfies at 4?
So no, you have the parent, and then it's a dumb black and white look. And so what I like to do for history is work backwards. I'm going to start with what I'm working on now, and then work backwards, because I think what is happening now is more interesting than a 4-year-old reading a comic. So what is a lot more interesting than a 4-year-old reading a comic is Stormy Daniels,
Yeah.
which is what I'm working on now a little bit. And I'm putting together a little short story about going out to see Stormy Daniels, which was oddly weirder than it sounds. She danced a few times in and around Portland, and I went out to see her, and I was the creepy guy standing in the corner drawing in my sketchbook. And this is one of the few places where it is actually helpful to be a cartoonist doing this kind of reporting rather than being a reporter doing it, because there's obviously no photography allowed inside.
I can't believe I actually know someone who went to the Make America Horny tour.
More than once. So standing in the corner being the creepy guy, starting to feel really self-conscious, then all of a sudden this, one of the ladies comes up, and I thought, oh, she's busting me, she's going to tell me to leave or something. But it turns out she was drawing me. And she said, it's only fair that I draw you. And so she drew me on stage with money falling around with my hat. It's, although a little alien. I guess I'm alienated. That's maybe, I just realized that. And so it's the crowd, I went early, and then the place slowly filled up. There's a lot of baseball caps, but there weren't any MAGA caps. And most all of the people were guys over 40 and white. So I'm trying to sort of like capture the vibe of the place. And also I'm trying to make it a family-friendly slideshow, so I starred out her nipples, because that's stuff. But I'm sitting there and like noticing the little weird things. Like there were these two guys up front by the stage. There's a pole and a stage, and then kind of a rimmed short wall around it. And then you're supposed to put dollars down, and they pick up the dollars. There's one lady's like picking up the dollars with her butt, which was really disturbing to me. Because I just thought, is this the change I'm getting? Are these the same dollars that I get as change?
Never ask where a dollar has been.
So that made me uptight. But these two guys, one of them had his phone out, and he's showing the other guy pictures, and so I'm kind of getting him close, and he's showing him pictures of his boat. Meanwhile, this woman's dancing around with a dollar in her butt.
Whatever floats your boat. I got one laugh. She's okay on me.
So eventually, Stormy did come out, and this is, a couple beers in, so this is my, well, nice drawing of that.
So is this the first time you saw Nick Moore?
That night, yeah. I mean, other than in my imagination. Yeah, she did her weird show, and let me tell you that American Girl by Tom Petty is never going to be the same for me. That was her opening bit, but I wait in line, see her, and the odd thing of it is that everybody there was kind of sleazy. I mean, there were the tourists there, like me. There were the people that were teetering on whether they should go to a strip club, and then this kind of pushed them over the top. And then there were the people that were the regulars, and then there were the dancers. So it was a weird scene. And I finally got up to meet Stormy Daniels, and I show her my Shit My President Says book, and I talked to her, and she was really funny and very articulate and on the spot and present. And so she's like, oh, I saw you sketching there. What are you sketching? And I was like, oh, nothing, just taking notes for this thing I'm doing. And she's like, well, how are they turning out? And I said, sketchy. She said, oh, I see what you did there. And just was snappy and on it. And then I was buying one of her videos, and she's like, oh, what do you like? And which put me on the spot. Wasn't sure how to answer it. And she saw that, and she's like, oh, do you like sex with dialogue or sex without dialogue? And I was like, dialogue? And do you like funny or scary? Funny? And she's like, oh, it's $20,
Talk about your niche markets.
Pretty slick. Yeah, she had it down. So the next, what do I have next? It's me in jail. I can't remember why.
That was a wild night.
Yeah,
probably right after
that.
that, yeah.
Driving home after 3 beers. So going on to some other stories. So I'm going to build that into a little short story. And basically, being that Stormy Daniels was the least sleazy person at this event, which was really an odd thing at the super sleazy thing. And you'd think Stormy Daniels, who had sex with the president, would be super sleazy, and she oddly wasn't, which really kind of blew my mind. And that was kind of my takeaway, is that for her to be navigating this kind of fame and narrative that she's doing really takes some intelligence and savvy in ways that I just did not expect to see at all. So it was well worth the experience of going to meet her and to see her. A previous story that I did, and this is collected in my most recent book, is the Camp Micropenis story.
Hey, I've been there. Class of 09.
And this is in the Very Stable Genius book, and it's a true story about a guy who I went to camp with who had a very small penis, and everybody knew about it. I'm going to blow the ending. If you
Whoa.
Everybody knew it, but nobody talked about it. And then one day I heard laughter coming from the showers, and I thought, oh, this guy's getting laughed at. And so I thought, I need to step in there and kind of, even though I didn't really know the guy, like he wasn't a friend, but I thought, this is messed up. I need to go in there and defend him, or stop this from happening. And when I walked into the showers, there's 5 guys naked in there, and the guy with the tiny penis is there, and everybody was laughing with him. He was laughing, they were laughing, and they're like, dude, this sucks for you. And he's like, I know. They're like, man, what are you going to do? He's like, there's nothing I can do. And everybody was commiserating and giving him sympathy, and it blew my mind. Like, this was one of those moments, and I've held on to that. And in the story, I talk about the dignity and grace that this guy had with his shortcoming was amazing. And I just thought, even then, we're prepubescent, and I thought, if this guy can deal with this problem this gracefully, no matter what I face as I get older, I need to at least try to have dignity and grace. And so, in the story, I say that he became sort of a penis Jesus for all of us, taking on all of our sins and fears and relieving us of our... So anyway, that's in this genius book that is ironically titled. Going back earlier, one of the people that I met at the Stormy Daniels event, they had gotten a hold of Trump. And I don't know if you all remember, shortly after the election, somebody deposited 4 Trump statues in different cities, and these people got hold of one, and they said, oh, do you want to come and see it? And it's important. And so I went down and got to see it in person.
Those statues have no penis, right? Yeah, they have no penis.
Intentional. And that's the tiny book that I did. Ship My President says, small for small hands is what the running joke is on that one. And it's a collection where I illustrated Trump's tweets, and this is one of the little drawings in there of just Trump being a narcissist and looking at himself in the image of a phone. The fake news, nice little merchandise that I like to always do with any sort of project that I'm working on. So 2012, going back further, rewrote the Bible with a friend of mine, and yes, and really this was a project where we started it, and it was so that I could learn about the Bible. Like I'd always wanted to read it, and so this was really a chance to dive in. And Mark, the writer on it, he's off doing Snagglepuss and Lone Ranger and Flintstones. Yeah, he's done. He's taken on.
Pretty big.
He's a great writer, and this came out of me bugging him for 5 years, saying, "Hey, what are you working on? Let's do something." And then in a bar, we started talking about the Bible, and I said, he explained, what did we start with? Oh man, we started with the guy that lived in the trash dump, and
Oscar?
yeah, that's Oscar. And his explanation of each book, and I'm like, hey, write this down, I'll do cartoons, you write. So anyway, I started doing cartoons for the Bible.
Too soon.
Some of them are offensive, I guess, I don't know. But the book is not meant to be a takedown by any stretch. It really is like, let's look at the Bible, let's try to understand it. I wanted to understand the stories and what it's about. And Ecclesiastes, I was like, wow, this really resonates. Hosea, I liked quite a bit. There's a bunch of books in there. Going back further, Oil and Water, did with Steve Dean, and that was me trying to illustrate New Orleans and all the devastation that's happened there.
We're picking this up from you at Expo 2011, and reading it on the flight back home, it's like, this is a really different side to Shannon Wheeler. It's just showing the dark, morbid situation of everyone being absolutely crippled by the oil situation that went down. And it affected every single business there, and it just tore lives apart.
Yeah, it was in part it was me really wanting to. I spent a few years trying to break away from doing too much coffee, and this partly was saying, hey, I want to try to exercise muscles that I haven't pushed before and do something.
It was a weird weekend that way. I remember seeing you go into some walk into some bar in Berkeley on the way from your Shattuck, and it's like, hey, there's Shannon. It's like, I guess, like a billion hipsters in that town, where we always identify you by your same hat.
There we go. That's why I gotta wear it.
Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, it was an interesting read. It was my time trying to be a hipster and read indie comics. I feel like I do that every time I go to Berkeley.
I appreciate it.
Fantastic comics.
That was a good, I really liked doing the project, and I liked going to New Orleans. This was about a shrimper and his fishing boat, and sort of how the economics were shifting because of the devastation, the oil problem. The kids book that I did, which is sort of not really a kid's book, Grandpa Won't Wake Up, from Boom, and that's where these two kids find their grandfather and are trying to wake him up, and they do things like dress him up as a Nazi. And I tried to be tasteful about it, dressed him up in Nazi clothes, but Grandpa won't wake up. Added fishnet pantyhose, but Grandpa won't wake up. And again, being tasteful, and then giving that up. Which, I wasn't sure whether it was a right-hand salute or left-hand salute, so I did both. I figured, the kids.
Yeah, the kids, yeah.
Going back 2008, Screw Heaven, When I Die I'm Going to Mars. This book I had and I was selling at a Wordstock, and that's when I ran into the New Yorker cartoonist, Matt Diffie. And I said to him, hey, I really want a cartoon for the New Yorker. How do I do this? And he said, oh, let me give you my phone number. Call me up and I'll tell you. So for 6 months, I tried my best to lose the phone number. I was so anxiety-ridden that I would just put it in the car, carry it inside, put it on the board, put it in my pocket, go, today I'm going to call. And I kept thinking, I need to have a great set of strips before I call. So finally I called him, and he's like, who? What? When? What do you want? Like, he was completely hostile. And then I'm like, yeah, no, you gave me your number. And he didn't believe me. Finally, he's like, Portland? Oh, that was a long time ago. I was like, yeah, I'm terrible. I'm a pathetic human being. So he said, sure, send me stuff, I'll critique it, and then I started doing that, and sure enough, he would go through each of the strips that I would give him and tell me why it didn't work, and would say, you know, we're not doing homeless cartoons anymore. We're not, cartoons about fat people aren't funny. Cartoons about themselves, meta cartoons where you're self-referential, those don't sell. Puns don't sell. So it was good, and I would alternate between thinking, you know, I know how to cartoon, I know what I'm doing, and then just being torn down and allowing myself to be deconstructed and then rebuild myself in a new art form. And then finally, after doing, you know, cartoons, him bringing them up to the editor, selling one finally after another 6 months, then I was just the next day I'm walking around the streets and I'm happy as a clam, and I run into Rick Remender and Kieran Dwyer, these other two cartoonists, and they're there having their coffee, and they're like, oh, what's going on? I was like, I just sold a cartoon to the New Yorker without missing a beat. One of them goes, oh, was it two cats talking? Another one goes, yeah, saying something pithy, something that's funny now, but nobody will get in 5 years. Yeah, something you have to explain to kids because they don't think it was funny ever at all. And I was like,
Better than me, because, you know, with the New Yorker caption contest, I've entered the same caption in for 7 years straight, hoping one day they will accept it. And the line I use is, where are the white women at? And one day they will accept it. I have done this for like close to 8 years, doing the same caption. And I'm just waiting till the point where they just take pity on me and put my caption in the New Yorker cartoon contest so I can say I won it once.
there's no pity there. No, that's not.
Can you at least tell me where the white women at?
There's no pity. So 3,000 cartoons in is about what I've done in submissions, and sold 100 and something. I don't know how many I've sold. I finally lost. My goal was to lose track, and I finally lost track. But there are, you know, it's a giant pile of cartoons, and it's nice. It really has developed. I've worked to push different styles, and then selling some of them. Like the marriage of, which this one is really interesting because they posted this, and then a lot of people got pissed off because they're saying that it was sexist, and then other people defend it, saying, no, this is actually her saving him from a futile act. And I, you know, so there's this weird dichotomy where you feel like, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty kind of cartoon where he's an idiot and she's saying stop pushing, you know, or is she stopping him from his endeavor? And it's, I don't know, there's a lot of projection in this one, but I really like it as a cartoon. Other silly cartoons that have sold, which then is really cool because I'm walking down the street and in the window I see that they're selling coasters. And it's like, oh, that's great. You know, and I never hear about it ahead of time, but I do get a little check. And they have a number, which means nothing. And
It's a little check.
it's a good, yeah, their license. So where and how the ideas come from, they can be from any place, and I just write them down as they come. So this, I write on my hand, okay, now I have a question for you, which is the wise man on the hill asking the tutu dressed person the question, which, so yeah, that's how any place at any time I'll be thinking and run something in my head and just write it down. And people look at me like I'm crazy. And now at the gym, you have to use your finger to get in, and I always have ink on my fingers. So every single night they're like, it's not working, try moving your finger up. I'm like, there's ink on my finger. So going to the opera, I'm not sure why this, oh, this is why. Okay, so the opera, after I wrote the opera, everything was going great. The Onion expressed interest in doing my cartoon. They wanted to run it, which the Onion to me was just up there with the New Yorker as one of the funniest places with really great people, and I thought working and publishing with them was amazing. I had a girlfriend who was a ballet dancer, so I was like stoked and totally rolling with that, and really happy as a clam. And then the opera was written, and we had a place that was going to be just like, it was amazing. Like, it was going to run in Austin. Somebody wanted to do this whole production. And then the Onion said they didn't have room for me, and they wanted to wait to run my cartoon. That's an Onion crying. The place in Austin that was going to run run the opera, it burned down.
Oh, that sucks.
And that same week, the girlfriend broke up with me.
Oh,
So I slid into a massive depression. Self-pity. It was just like, I was filled with self-pity. Until Paul called up and said he had this art show. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'll go to this art show. This is after a month of feeling sorry for myself. So I dragged myself out to go to his art show. And it turned out,
Nice teeth.
as, sure enough, as I walked closer and closer, I realized that his art show was in the bottom floor of where the ballet performs. And so when I got there, photos of my girlfriend were all, or ex-girlfriend, the one that dumped me, were all up over, like these 12-foot photos were all up around. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna get drunk. And so, you know, I talked to people, and I met this older woman there, and I said, oh, what do you do? And she said, oh, I book acts for PCPA, Portland Center for
Robin
Performing
Williams.
Arts. And I said, oh, I happen to have an opera. You should run my, I was drunk at this point. I was like, run my opera. And she's like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And I got her card, so the next day I woke up and I was like, what have I done? You know, and then I thought to myself, either I can continue this self-pity routine or I can drag myself out. So I started sending her stuff every week. I sent her the score of the opera, which this is a representation of the actual score. The libretto, the next week I'd send her the libretto. She'd go, oh, that's great. Do you have any ideas on how you'd stage it? So I started doing all these sketches of like all that. Then I made a little model, and I'd take pictures of the model, and I'd move like people around. And then I hired musicians to record part of it. Then just every week I would send her a new package of material. I broke into where the place was where they were talking about performing it, and I saw that they had a little model there. And so I built a model, I measured it out, and then built a model of the same set and built the tiny set to sit inside the model. So every week, and then eventually, she kept putting me off saying, oh, do this, do that. And then eventually she's like, you know, I think this might actually work. And she said it was just through sheer diligence. She said she gets pitched every day to do some stupid thing or other, but she said the amount of energy that I had put into this was just outrageous. So she was like, anyway, so we did the opera, and it was great. It sold out. Oh, that's Stacy up on stage. She was great. Yeah, it sold out. We did a few weekends and then extended it, did some more. So this was one of the few times where you just do something so stupid and then it actually turns out to kind of work in a way that is surprising. And it just played again in Albuquerque. They did another production of it. So every year, so there's a production here and there, and it's great.
How long is it run?
What's that?
How long does it run?
It's about an hour. And I wanted to keep it short in case it really sucked. And that way people wouldn't have
A lot of
to...
confidence, huh?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it's an opera. Like, give me a break. It's an opera, you know? I'd be flipping and there's the art channel and I'd be like, oh, they're doing duet. I should have a duet. You know, like, I did not know opera, you know, and except Bugs Bunny opera. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, he'll sing a love song with the coffee cup and they'll have a duet. And then that way I can double up on acting, so we only have to hire 3 people because the cup will be a character, and that could be, the espresso guy could sing as the cup, and so it's like 4 characters for the price of 3. I just tried to cut corners every place I could. Going back further, 2001, did a magazine, which I should talk about more of, because that was another stupid idea where it's like, I want to work with other people and I want to include other people's work and have that synergy of partnerships, which I really get a lot out of. And this is our editor posing on the cover. I can't remember who the photographer was.
Those are not too long after American Beauty, and so it was a riff on the American Beauty poster image.
A riff on American.
And it was
yeah.
such a horrible time to start a magazine, wasn't it?
It was the worst. It was going well, and we were selling around 5,000 to 10,000 copies, a little bit more, and then distributors were going out of business every couple months, and so I would lose 1,000 copies to a distributor that goes out, and so all of a sudden you're not getting paid. There are $2,000 that you're kind of expecting, and then another one would go out, and then Australia would somehow steal a bunch of stuff from you because they're all thieves in Australia.
No, it's true, that's why they're
That's why they're
nation.
Australia.
That's why. That's exactly how their nation was founded.
Sorry, Australians. There goes my market.
My bad.
Going back further, Too Much Coffee Man comic book, which I did for a few years, and I did all the covers alternating black and white, so that if anybody ever did a big display, it would be a nice checkerboard pattern. It would kind of dominate from across the room.
I never realized that till now.
Yeah, and nobody did, which is another one of those things that I'm constantly annoyed that I don't have the credit for doing this silly thing. And I'm a big ska fan too, which, you know, you got that. The Too Much Coffee Man, I break into 3 stories, so I've got the cartoonist as a storyline, I've got the cartoon as a storyline, and I've got the readers as a storyline. And so this is the Too Much Coffee Man saying, at the very top, he's lamenting the quantity of comics and how we're just sand on the beach as more and more comics are being produced, and we're being slowly awash in all this crap. And what's the point of producing another comic? And then standing in the comic shop, watching these kids buy one of the comics and feeling the exact opposite, from helplessness to feeling like, oh, I'm a genius and these kids love my stuff and this is really great. And then have the store owner saying that it was kind of weird. He goes, oh, like weird, kind of like creepy? No, not creepy, just masturbatory. Which it kind of is to watch people buy your comics, and it is creepy. I was proud, this is the cartoonist, and this is one of the meta jokes that I can't do for the New Yorker, where the cartoonist hits a writer's block, and I was very proud that it's a 3-pun. So like if you're gonna dive into, the cartoonist can't come up with an idea, so the writer's block becomes a literal block, which then becomes a blank panel as you zoom in, and then the panel actually stops the telling of the story, because obviously you don't actually have writer's block. So it's a nice 3-way pun, which I was very proud of. But that said, Too Much Coffee Man, I did his mini comics for years before, and that's self-publishing, little tiny comics. Ancillary items I would do, like t-shirts and things. And I thought, okay, Too Much Coffee Man, what can I do to make a really good t-shirt? And I thought, Japanese kanji. Like this is anybody that, if you put kanji next to your drawing, like all of a sudden, you've got something that looks really good. Because this is 2,000 years, they worked on making this lettering look cool. So you slap some of that on, your drawing looks cool by association, right? So then I started thinking like, okay, well, how do I do this? The only way to do this without being a pretentious asshole is if you were selling it in Japan. And I thought, okay, how do I find a distributor to get that to happen? And there's no way. And I thought, okay, how do I get a bootleg to happen in Japan? And I thought, well, that is equally as impossible. And then I thought, well, why not just pretend that it was bootlegged and just say that you're bootlegging a bootleg? So then I did a design of that. So here's the worst magician. This is a fake bootleg of a bootleg. And it's me just wanting to use Japanese characters but then I would have to tell people that, oh no, it's not I never got to take credit for this weird thing.
Until now.
Until now. Thank you. And here's the explanation of the kanji. It's my friend's mother-in-law who did the kanji, and she was really excited to write it up. And the explanation of person or persons who drink coffee often, because in Japanese, you don't have this notion of wretched excess. It's 3 too many, 5 too many, it's specified amount. It's very idiomatic to English to just have gross excess. That's changing, their language is adopting to accommodate us. Jab is a comic I did with my buddies back in Austin, and this is the comic that we shot with a gun, and he's saying, this book has a bullet hole in it. It's not mint. Dear God in heaven, it's not mint. And this is the era when we had gimmicks in comics, and we put out the first issue, it sold well. We did the second, it sold half, and it's an anthology. So, and all of a sudden we lost money on the second issue, and we're like, okay, we gotta up our sales. We need a gimmick to sell it. But the gimmick, if you do a hologram, that's 50 cents a book extra. You do a foil stamp, that's 25 cents a book extra. You do a hardback, you do any gimmick is going to cost you at the printer it's going to be your profit margin. And then if you don't actually sell more books, so then it was Ashley, a buddy of mine who was 4 beers in, said, let's shoot them all with guns. And being, a supporter of stupid things, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then everybody else was like, no, we can't do that. But, I pushed it through, and Ashley was into it, so it was 2 of us, and we convinced the room, and then did the whole book meta.
I'm sorry, did you shoot stacks of comics? Or?
Yes.
Stacks was like, did you find out how many you could go through before the bullet stops?
It spreads, so the impact as it goes through, there are different bullets do different things. So that was one argument, it's going to be too expensive, so we had to do the math of like, okay, 100 bullets is $5, 3,000 books, you can stack them into tens, so this is going to cost $30 for us to do this game. Okay, we can afford that. We'll have to buy less beer, but we can afford that. And then, how many can we do? So we took these Marvel comics out into the forest and shot them. Like, will this actually work? Stacks of 10, 5, what's our stacks? And then there's powder burns on the top ones. We charged extra for that. And then we had 9mm that we would charge, I think, $5 for, like a $2.50 book. And then a 36, and then a 45. And then we would charge more as the caliber went up. And then we had a shotgun issue.
So the more damaged issues are actually worth more?
The only time in history, the worse the condition, the more value.
That's brilliant.
And the shotgun issue came polybagged, guaranteed unreadable. Which was a perfect FU to all the stupid gimmicks and the bricking, whatever they call the comics where you put in the bag and don't read them. And then we tried to slab it. Thank you. That was just the dumbest thing. It's still dumb. Sorry. So all the inside, we tried to get the stories to go with the bullet holes. So this is the Elvis decanter that gets shot, and then Too Much Coffee Man. So the bullet, as it goes through, makes a hole on every page, and tried to integrate that hole into the storyline. So Elvis getting shot, the window breaking, a tire blowing out, just whatever thing you could think of to make it work as part of the story. It's Too Much Coffee Man slowly feels more and more guilty because he knows somebody's shooting at him. So I accepted gifts from lobbyists, lied to the press, and raised taxes. I sold arms to Iraq, manipulated SNL funds, but it couldn't be any of that stuff. Nobody's ever been convicted for doing those things, ever. So I guess that's like an evergreen. I was going to do this as a Kennedy decanter, and then I thought that was in bad taste. Elvis. So there I am with my 20-odd. It's just 22s longs. And we went out to a field. First day we had a whole party. There's a bunch of us. So we shot about 1,000. Second day, half the number. Third day, it was me and 2 buddies. And then it started raining. And then this guy that I was working for, I was complaining. I was like, yeah, it's raining. Nobody wants. He's like, oh, just bring them over to my house. You can shoot them in my garage. So I shot 3,000 books in this guy's garage. I was It's like, no, it's, you know, it's bullets. He's like, yeah, it's just a 22, it's a pop gun. We'll just turn up the music. It's not a big deal. All right, it's Texas. I was like, this is really, you know, like I'm not in Berkeley anymore. So going back further, Children of Blue, my first book, and look, Diane, there's one of my funnier ones, cartoonists showing off their works. So that's one of the first cartoons I ran in the Daily California. I think that's about it. So that runs from Stormy Daniels to, the next book too. This is what I'm doing now, is putting together a bunch of these things into the before years. So I'm going to run a lot of the newspaper strips. And then here I am with Stormy Daniels. And then here I say...
Shaved for her.
What's that?
Shaved for her?
Oh yeah, this was before. This was 6 months ago, before I grew in my beard. I did shave for her though, actually. You should shave for a porn star.
They shave for you.
Did she charge to have the picture taken?
What's that?
Did she charge to have the picture taken?
Yeah, it was 20 bucks, 10 bucks, 20 bucks, something like that.
Well,
Yeah.
it makes a great PowerPoint slide.
Yeah.
She was great. I mean, I honestly liked, I was shocked. I liked her. And then, yeah, visit me in my booth. I'm out there in the thing. And then that's a painting that sometimes I hang up at, outside my booth. And that's the end of the show. So that's it on that.
Oh, cool.
And-
So we open up for questions.
Yeah. What do we got? Oh,
Oh,
I
okay.
seem to have heard somewhere that you are related to Major Wheeler Nicholson, is that true?
yes. Yeah, Major Wheeler Nicholson, in some accounts, is the inventor of comic books. He started DC before it was DC and before it was taken over by criminals. And he got kind of outed from the company by sort of Trump shenanigans, Trump-ish kind of bad business dealings.
Why were all the comic companies run by mobsters?
Because they were running liquor and porn, and when liquor became legal, they needed a new business, and then they saw, they were printing porn on these printing presses, which were also doing the comics. Then they saw, when the money ran out on the liquor, they're like, oh, they're making a lot of money on these comics, let's just take it over and take this money. It's a very
So we have liquor and porn to thank for our comic industry. Thank you, everyone.
yeah.
Join us next year, 2020, for Liquor and Porn Fest.
We should call the panel liquor and porn.
Yes.
So that's yeah.
Did you want to mention MTV?
The which one?
MTV. Did you want to mention it?
No.
Okay.
No, I did a little stuff for MTV. I did a commercial for Converse, and that was one of, there is a bit of slideshow that I took out where, to get Too Much Coffee Man #1 to sell, I did these animation cells, and I said, if you bought 10 comic books, you would get a free animation cell. And so they're still floating around, and that was to do two things. One, it was to get the comics to sell more. And then also, I knew that if a store got an animation cell, they'd put it up on their wall, so it would act as an advertisement. And three, it would imply that there was an animation show, which the Turtles had just exploded and everybody had missed the boat on the Turtles, and I wanted to imply that I was the next boat. So they needed now, before the show exploded, to buy 10 copies, which they did, and then I was stuck doing 1,018 animation cells, so I had to buy beer and pizza for all my friends, and we did an assembly line where I would ink it, hand it to the next person, and they would paint the flesh. Hand it to the next person, I would paint the white. They would hand it to the next person, paint the red. And so then I would put random numbers in the top right, like R17, to make it look like it was a shot from a particular scene. And then, to keep my friends that were getting drunk entertained, I would have to do weirder and weirder drawings, which then worked to be like, why the hell is this happening? You know, like to keep it interesting and funny so that they would keep working. So yeah, that's another. And then from that, because the comic book sold well, the Converse called me up and said, hey, we want to do this commercial. So a animation came out of pretending to do an animation. which is weird. Like pretending that there was a show, then created a commercial with this animator that I really liked.
Super meta.
And also with the Japanese bootleg. Then I got a call from Japan and I licensed my bootleg of a bootleg shirt to Japan where they sold 5,000 shirts. So that's another weird thing of reality following imposterism or whatever word. It's, yeah, catch me if you can kind of, but dumber.
Well, ain't nothing dumber than that. So, do we have any other final questions as we get to the final moments of our panel?
Another question? I'll tell all. I have no filters. It's really a horrible.
And that's why we love you. You just told us about like going to a Stormy Daniels like Make America Horny tour, and it's like the most brilliant thing I've heard all weekend. Like that's a tough act to follow.
Selling a sex doll. That's in the Genius book, and that's where at a garage sale. It's a story where I was trying to sell one of those inflatable. A friend of mine had mailed it to me as a joke.
My house is like filled with those.
We had a long distance relationship, so anyway, so
With the sex doll?
yeah, so I was trying to sell it when I was moving. I was like, I need to sell this sex doll, and I mean inflatable doll. I don't know, the little face.
Yeah, we have a factory that makes the robot ones up here. So.
Oh God, that's a different.
They're scary too.
That's a different level. So I was trying to sell this thing all day long, and it was not selling. Everybody would come up, $10, right, like impulse buy level. And they would laugh, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is really funny," and then they would not buy it. But it was right up to that edge, but just could not. And I'm like, "Okay, I need to think of something to sell this thing because people want to buy it, they're just not doing it." So I made a sign. I didn't lower the price. I made a sign, and I wrote one word on there, and I put it on the sex doll. The next person that came up laughed and bought it immediately.
Used?
Nope.
And the word was?
Virgin.
So I
The Virgin book? I'm sorry, I came in.
Sold
Your
sex doll.
story.
It's a yeah. Cheers. So yes, that's another story in there. Again, I'm blowing my own punchline, but
Well,
read the stories.
that's a good way to end a blow-up doll joke.
Any other questions, real quick?
Any other questions?
Okay.
I think that people that, do jihad explosions probably get 1,000 virgin sex dolls. They just get a room with 1,000 boxes.
Now, that's all right.
Sold like that. It was amazing. Oh, we got more time. Come on, we got a question or two. If we got this much time, we can burn this.
We got one more. What other embarrassing, humiliating, gross stories do you have?
I have a pants full of them.
Okay.
Any other questions? I can tell. Let's see. I snuck into Steve Ditko's office. Well,
Wait, what? Hold on. I gotta hear this.
I was in New York and I wanted to meet Steve Ditko, so I called up my friend at Marvel and I said, "What's his address?" And she's like, "Well, I can't give this to you really."
It was a spot in Times Square.
It's Midtown. It was by McDonald's. Where was it? It was like 47th, 51st? 51st, yeah, it's right, kind of right below the park. I had 2 hours before I needed to get on the subway to catch my plane home, so I had 2 hours, I should meet Ditka. So I hung out at the lobby, kind of outside, loitering, until the, what do you call it, the guy in the front. No, it was the doorman guy. I had to go get a delivery, and then I stuck and I look at you look at the list of what, second floor, I think it was second floor. And so I just took the elevator up really quick and then knocked, but he wasn't there. But
He didn't answer the door.
Or he didn't answer. I put a note under there saying what a big fan I was. I wish I had gotten to talk to him.
I nailed him once.
Doorman probably lost his job.
Ditko has the most beautiful way of telling you to F off no matter what.
You got a response?
I got a response.
But any other questions? But doing comics is one of the dumber things. It takes a lot of work, and doing something like, I'm doing comics. Now I want to get in the New Yorker, like that. 3,000 cartoons to sell a handful of cartoons to them.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So, what was your first Comic-Con?
It was 91 or 92, something like that. Went to San Diego.
Think opera.
Went to Dallas Fantasy Fair a bunch, and didn't know how good we had it because Larry Langford, who ran that, would give kids like me that were just stupid with photocopy mini comics. My buddies and I would drive up there and put our comics out and sell them. But San Diego, I went and I would go to Artist Alley and I would wait until people were gone and I had a little suitcase of stuff. And so when Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, Klaus wasn't there at all, so I would
No,
go.
Klaus will only show up to the final hour of a convention.
Which
And
by
I
then
get
I
up-
was gone.
Yeah, and it's like,
So I would set up at Klaus, and then kids would come up, and I'd sign their Daredevils for them. But I'd sell coffee mugs and T-shirts and everything. So it was.
You sign a club, your name
so
is
yeah, there's a bunch
Bob
of there's a bunch of Shannon Wheeler signed Daredevil comics out there. Like,
A couple. There was a couple. Well, I'd sign my name. I'm not going to forge somebody else's name.
okay,
Draw a little coffee cup.
Shannon Wheeler, author, inker of Dark Knight Returns. We'll slap that.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you have any plans of making any more books like God is Disappointed in You with other religious texts?
I've talked to Mark about that because he did the heavy lifting on that book. He was raised
Okay.
Pentecostal, and I wanted to do a children's Bible with him. I thought that would be funny, but he was like, I don't know. The Bible for him, he has a real intimate relationship with it, and he doesn't with the Quran or the any of the other, like what is the one everybody wants to do, the Mormon book, which is just
It's been done.
it's not a lot of interest in doing that. We have talked about doing kind of a history book about, he believes that religions are created to fill a need, and looking at religion through that lens of saying, this religion came out in this way to fill this need. And so Mormonism being manifest destiny, how do you motivate these people to breed and to move? Old Testament being very much, how do you survive in the desert? Don't mix your, tweed and whatever stupid things that, are in Leviticus, don't eat shellfish, that kind of thing, no sandwiches. So I'd like to do something. I liked working with Mark a lot, and so we might. I don't know. We'll see. A kid's Bible, I still just shoot for
That would
that.
be great. I agree.
Paul, you had a question. What's
I asked it.
Oh,
No, I-
yeah.
I have two questions about the New Yorker thing, actually. First of all, I'm really impressed at some of the stuff that you were talking about with the level of dedication and the many steps that you went through to get to some of these things. Like, I want to do cartoons for the New Yorker, and you went through like 6 months of going back and forth to this guy. I want to do this opera. You spent all this time, like really. I did not know you created miniature sets. Actually, that's crazy, but awesome. So the New Yorker seemed like a very specific goal. Do you have any other goals like that you haven't fulfilled yet that you're thinking about for the future?
Oh, good question. Part of it, like getting the New Yorker was I get broken up by somebody and I've got I'm heartbroken and I'm depressed, and then it's like, okay, I need to get manic about something. So it's like, where can I focus? And I'd like to do an animation of the opera. Like that is something that has been itching at me for a while, and figuring out how to do that, and I kind of have my ears open. Like opera is a beautiful sand painting. Like to see it is a moment in time. You go and see opera and the people up on stage are superheroes. Like it's unreal hearing them sing, and it moves you and it resonates inside your chest, and you're like, this is a superpower. It's incredible. But a recording of it just does not do it justice. Like a sand painting, it is there for the moment. The only way around that is kind of doing an animation. That's where you've got your Bugs Bunny singing opera, and that's where I think maybe I can have some of that energy of the opera translate into a different medium by doing an animation. So I'm wanting to do that, but I don't know all these things. I don't know how to do it. because it's $1 million project, and I don't want it to suck. That's the other thing.
None of your stuff sucks. Well, I mean, even your book of rejected New Yorker cartoons. Sure, they suck, but we love them.
Well, thank you. What's the other question?
Why did you want to be in the New Yorker so badly?
I love it. I mean, I've always loved
You like their cartoons?
like Gay and Wilson,
Okay.
and then We'll Get 'Em. Like it's an art form that just is mystical to me. Where to have a narrative, the good New Yorker cartoons, they have a narrative that leads up to that moment, and then a narrative that follows it, and your brain is creating 6-12 panels out of a single moment, and that is magic, and it's reduction in a way that is just incredible. So learning how to do that and is really something I wanted.
And isn't that the pinnacle for the spot humor cartoon?
That's external. Is that internal motivation? I wanted to figure it out, and yeah.
All right.
And that's it.
And that's
Thank
it.
you guys so much for coming.